All toy restorations will be handled by the YouTubers controlling each channel. Reproduction parts may not be used where there are Star Wars forums. Toy restorers and collectors are available. Toy-polloi has been assigned.
Welcome to Toy-polloi.
Hello and welcome to another video from toy-polloi, and today we're going to be looking at restoring and repairing this vintage 1978 Kenner remote controlled R2-D2. Now, as you can see, he is in a pretty sorry state. I was actually recently sent a box of Star Wars mini rigs by a good friend of the channel, John, and in the bottom of that box he had hidden this guy. And I know a lot of people want me to do restorations on mini rigs, but it was actually this remote controlled R2-D2 that caught my eye first, just because he is in such a sorry state, and I thought he would be a fun project to try and get sort of at least up and looking quite nice. Because in a minute I'll take you through everything that's wrong with him, and I have the feeling that he's almost beyond repair, but he's not beyond display, which is what I want to do to him. I want to take this sort of very battered R2-D2 and get him so that he looks really quite nice again. So first up, let's take a closer look at the R2-D2 and I'll show you exactly what's wrong with him and why I think I'm just going to get him ready for display rather than getting him sort of fully working again. So this is the R2-D2 that John sent in. I think he said that he got it in a job lot of stuff, and he has no idea what happened to it. It was bought sort of as is, and it really is in a terrible state. I'm not quite sure what has happened to the chrome. This dome on the top of R2-D2 should be fully chromed. In fact, he should look like the other 12-inch R2-D2s that I showed you in the first shot, so it should all be shiny like this. But as you can see, it's not. It may have been that a battery has leaked at some point, because I know battery acid does remove the chrome, and you can see pretty much every part of the chrome has been removed. So that is a really horrid sort of thing to see, the poor R2-D2 without any chrome on him. You can see he's really absolutely filthy as well. There's so much sort of dirt and grime in him. Just moving him around on my desk is producing quite a lot of sort of debris and dust. If we turn him over, you can see that is supposed to be a sticker on the bottom that says electronic toy do not drop, but it has turned to powder. In fact, if I just touch it, you can see it is just this sort of messy powdery stuff, so that is going everywhere. If we turn him over, he's supposed to be electronic and remote controlled, as I say, so I think batteries have been left inside him, bits have broken. You can just about see motors and stuff inside. All of those are rusted out. There's rust everywhere, so he must have got wet at some point. We've got the connectors missing. The battery compartment cover is missing. The actual remote control device, which is a sort of black thing which has an aerial on it, that I don't have at all. So he is just in a very sorry state, and really without the remote control I can't ever fix him anyway. And I'm just looking at the electronics through this, they are in a very rough condition, so I'm sort of in my mind at the moment thinking that I won't be able to fix them up. Everything is corroded. You can just about see the switch there inside, completely corroded out. So for this part of sort of the project, what I'm going to do is take this thing apart, clean it up, and see if I can at least get it displayable again. We'll try and sort out something on the chrome here. We'll clean up all of the plastic. I'm not quite sure if I'm going to de-yellow him. I've shown de-yellowing in my previous restorations on the 12-inch R2-D2, so if you want to watch how to de-yellow it, check those out. I quite like that sort of level of dirt on him, but it's everything else that really sort of puts this one in an undisplayable state. So first thing to do though, I think, is I'm not going to take him apart just as he is, because he is so filthy. I'm going to give him a quick clean so that I'm not producing so much mess. Essentially I'm going to sort of take off these stickers and try and get some of the grime out first, so that when I do take him apart he is not dropping pieces everywhere, which is what is currently happening. So I'm going to give it a very careful clean, just using hot soapy water and a toothbrush, and not sort of dunk him in the water. I'm basically going to put the toothbrush in the water and get the water on and clean him as best I can. Although it is corroded, I don't want to make anything any worse inside, on the off chance that I can salvage him. So let's give him a good clean first, and then we'll see what possibly we can do with this very battered R2-D2. after a good wash, this is already starting to look a whole lot better. I've managed to get most of the dirt and grime off. I've removed that really awful sticker off the bottom, and I've started to get rid of the stickers inside it as well. And the whole thing feels quite clean now, and I can certainly handle it without leaving bits sort of on my desk the whole time. So now what I'm going to do is actually start to take it apart. I've never actually worked on one of these before, but there are fairly obvious screws on it, so I reckon if I take that screw out and the screw there, we can start to remove these legs. There's a screw on the back here inside, which I hope will start to remove the front of it. And I know from having a little bit of research that under this there is another screw, so we need to take that little piece of plastic out, and then we can unscrew his dome. As I say, I have no idea what I'm going to sort of find inside. I have a feeling it's going to be quite a mess, but already the fact this is clean, and I do like this sort of aging that we got on the front of it, the little marks and that. So I'm really liking the look of this. I think if I can fix the dome, we'll end up with quite a displayable sort of R2-D2. I did post a picture of this onto my Instagram account, and a few people saying, why don't I turn it into an R2-Q5, which is the one with the black dome and a black body, which would be quite a nice idea. But as I don't actually have one of these remote control R2-D2s, I do want to try and make it look quite original. So I'm still going to go down the route of making this sort of chromed again and repainting everything. But first up, let's take this thing apart. I've got the legs and the front of the body off now, and you can start to see what's going on. There's certainly a lot of damage in here, and there's a few wires that have become detached. There's a black wire here which I think goes to the speaker, which is very corroded, and I would very much doubt that that would actually work, but that should have that wire attached there. There is another wire here that has snapped off one of the motors that drive the wheels, and generally, yeah, it's looking pretty rough. So I think what I'm going to do is I'll take the head of R2-D2 off, and then I'm going to give it a secondary clean. I can obviously clean these pieces now a lot easier. I'm hoping when I take the head off I'll be able to clean that, and I'll just clean it a bit more. But as I sort of mentioned at the start, I don't think I'm going to try and get this working. There's a lot of corrosion going on. You can see the motors here are quite corroded, so I don't think they will work even with sort of a good clean. Yeah, I'm generally sort of in the mind that this is going to be just a display piece. I mean, as I said, maybe in future I'll find another one, I can get that one working, but for this, let's just make it displayable. I've just managed to get one of the motors out that drive the wheels. I've not seen motors like this in Star Wars toys before. You can see it's a little sort of oblong shaped motor, but is completely seized up. You should be able to turn that middle section there, you can see with the green wire on it, and it is absolutely corroded together. It really is impossible to move. I can see that the little gear has sort of come loose at the end of it. Looks like that has split. But yeah, if this is the state of this motor, then I don't think any of the others are going to be in a workable state. I can see there's all bits of rust and stuff in there. It's just interesting to sort of take it apart. Something has obviously happened to this over the years. You can see how dirty my fingers are just from trying to move that. I'm guessing batteries have leaked and it's probably got damp in someone's loft and generally it's just sort of corroded away. So yeah, I'm just going to clean this up and put it back together and ignore the rest of the inside of this. It's a shame that it can't be repaired, but I think this is beyond my skills of trying to get it working again. With R2 apart like this, I've actually given everything another good clean because I can now get into all the areas that I couldn't get into before, and because I know that the insides of it is pretty sort of corroded, I'm not too worried now about getting it sort of that wet, although I have tried to keep everything sort of as dry as I possibly can. I think the first thing I want to do is actually sort out this dome and try and re-chrome it. You can see he has a little plastic red eye there where an LED should shine through. We need to remove that. It doesn't look like it it's held in particularly by anything. There may have been some glue on there at some point, but that looks like it's sort of cracked over the years. So let's just give that a push and see what happens. Okay. There you go, that just unclipped, so that's his eye out. I'm not quite sure why it is red or even why it lights up, because when you see R2-D2 in the movies, that is a black eye and doesn't light up at all. It's all of these little ones on the front that do light up, but that's something that they have done over the years with these R2-D2 toys. It's always that middle one that seems to light up, which it doesn't in the movies, but you know, that's just one of those toy things. So now we need to chrome this. If you've watched my videos on fixing up the 12-inch version of R2-D2, the normal non-electronic version, I used Molotow liquid chrome pens to touch up the chrome on those that had been damaged, and they are quite good, but they are a little bit temperamental. You do have to leave the pen to dry for, you know, 3 to 4 weeks before you can touch it. If you touch it before then, it dulls. So on this one I'm going to be trying something different. I've bought this paint called Mirror. It's by Stuart Semple. It's very expensive. It comes in a small pot like this, so I think this is about is it 15 mils, something like that. It's quite a small amount anyway, and that costs about £35, so it is very pricey. But I've tried it on some other things and had pretty good results. They're not perfect, but they are really quite good. So that is what I'm going to be using on this today. It's a solvent-based paint, so you do need to have some white spirit or something like that to clean your brushes. Give it a good shake and put it on very, very thinly. I've got a small fine brush here, so I'm going to be putting thin coats of it on, and I might even do a couple of coats as I go around. But so far with the tests I've been doing on other things, it does do a really nice job, and the finish is pretty sturdy and hardy, so you can actually touch it after a couple of hours and you won't damage it at all. So let's get this painted and chromed and we'll see what it looks like. And there you go, that is after one coat of the mirror chrome. You can see it is really very nice. You can actually see me reflected in it. Hello there. Yeah, so it really does work very nicely. I'm going to let this dry and I will then give it a second coat, but as an initial coat that really does look very nice indeed. It is a very chromy finish. You can see a few little brush strokes in it, but not too bad. I think by the time I've done a second coat those will disappear. So yeah, I'm very impressed with this stuff. It's expensive, but it does give a very nice finish. After two light coats, I'm really very happy with the end results of this. As you can see, that's got a lovely sort of chrome finish. It's not absolutely mirror perfect. You can see a few little brush strokes in it, but the overall effect is very impressive indeed. So the next thing I want to do is replace the missing blue panels. Now, I've actually shown you how to do this before. Again, if you watch my previous R2-D2 12-inch restoration, I used this stuff, which is Tamiya Clear Blue. It's number X23, and that gives quite a nice finish because you can paint it on top of this chrome, so you get a bit of the shine of the chrome through it and a nice sort of blue tone to it. Again, you might need to do a couple of coats on this. I'm going to do one coat and I'll see what it looks like, and I will come back and do another, but this is what I'm going to be using. So let's get all of the blue onto this R2-D2 dome, and I think that will really bring it to life. At the moment, just because it's all chrome, you can see a few sort of minor blemishes, but I think by the time we start to break that up with the blue and then we put the red dot on the front, the overall effect of this is going to be very impressive indeed. So let's get painting the blue. And there you go, that is the finished dome. I ended up putting 2 coats of the blue Tamiya paint on. One coat is just too thin and you end up with really obvious brush marks. By the time you put 2 coats on, you can see it gets quite nice and thick and gives a very sort of pleasing overall sort of metallic blue effect. You can see the chrome through that paint really quite nicely. And I've just added a little red dot for his eye there, and that's just some Humbrol acrylic paint. This is number 238. When that is dry, I will just add a little bit of a top coat to that to make it shiny, because this is a matte paint. Now, a lot of people will ask, am I going to be putting a top coat over the chrome, over everything, a spray top coat or something like that? And the answer is no. I've just done a quick test so you can see what happens. On the left is the top coated paint, so that is the silver as it comes out of the pot, the sort of mirror chrome, and on the right you can see that I have sprayed some top coat on it, and you can see how dull it gets. It loses the chrome effect, and that seems to be the case with all of these mirror chromes. There are some people say that you can sort of put a top coat on them and it doesn't, but I've yet to find one that actually works and leaves it this shiny. Certainly not from a rattle can or anything like that. Maybe if you use an airbrush, which if you've been watching my channel for a long time, you know I don't do that, because I try and keep all of my fixes so that anyone can have a go at them, and airbrushes cost quite a lot of money. So yeah, in this instance I'm not going to bother putting a top coat on. I think this mirror chrome has sort of, you can see I can touch it, it doesn't mark at all. So unlike the Molotow chrome, it is quite a sturdy coat. I am going to leave it though just for an extra couple of days just to make sure everything is cured, but the overall effect I am very pleased with. As you can see, that looks really quite nice. So now I am going to sort out making a missing battery cover for this R2-D2. I'm going to put the rest of the figure back together. I'm not going to be showing that because basically you just have to reverse everything I showed you at the start by sort of putting the screws in the right places and screwing them together. But let's get on and make a replacement battery cover. For the missing battery cover, I'm going to try and construct something out of 1mm styrene sheet. You can see here I've cut a piece of the 1mm sheet off, and this is already the right size to go in the hole. Obviously it is flat at the moment, so it doesn't actually quite fit properly, but I think that will be a good basis to start making something. I have a few photos of what is missing, because you can see there are some panels here that actually sort of continue onto the back of the battery compartment, and I will try to recreate those. As I say this is 1mm styrene sheet. I've actually got on order some 0.5mm styrene sheet, which is what I'm going to try and cut some of these details out of, because they're only slightly raised, but the initial thing I need to do is actually make something that clips in place. So I'm going to bend this just very carefully, sort of working my way along until I've got a nice curve to it. Then I'm going to try and recreate some of the bits I know will hold this in. So we need a couple of little tabs at the bottom, maybe 3 tabs, so that you can sort of hook this in, and then we need to fashion some sort of clip that goes in here. At the moment I don't really have an idea of what I'm going to do. I'm just going to sort of make something and see what happens as I go along. But the first thing to do is to bend this so that it actually sort of sits quite nicely there. I could heat this up in some just boiled water, but I think because this is a thin sheet, if I just gently work it like this in my fingers, keep going back and forth, you can see it does start to curve quite quickly. So just by doing that, I will get a curve that fits. So I'm going to do that first, and then I'll start adding some tabs to it to actually sort of clip it in place. Right, so after about 20 minutes work, I've managed to make quite a sort of actually workable little battery cover there. So this is some 1mm styrene sheet, and then I've sort of made little tabs out of offcuts of 2mm and 1mm styrene sheet. So the tabs at the bottom are 2mm styrene. I wanted something fairly thick on those, that they nicely clip into these little gaps at the bottom. And I've made this sort of little spring-loaded sort of latch catch type thing. So that's added a couple of bits of 2mm styrene just to give the bottom part part of it some strength. And then the top piece is a 1mm styrene sheet, so it's got a little bit of bend to it. And then I've got a little angled piece on there so that it catches just on the inside lip of the main part of R2-D2 there, and it actually works really quite well. So you basically put the 3 little bits in the bottom, drop that down, and that clicks in place. So it's a really quite nice snug fit. It's not going to fall out, and it does the job very nicely. Now I could just leave it like this, give it a bit of a paint so that it sort of matches the aging and yellowing of the plastic, but what I really want to do is try and copy some of these panels. So as I say, I've ordered some 0.5mm styrene sheet, and I'm now going to use that to try and cut and make some panels to match that. Then once that's done, I will give it a couple of coats of paint to try and match this yellowing, and I think that should do the job quite nicely. But even in this sort of state like this, that actually covers the battery compartment pretty well.
Toy-Polloi.
Okay, so that is with the added detail. I did make a couple of mistakes while trying to plastic weld this stuff on. It is really thin and really quite fiddly, so you can see I've actually made a little bit of a mess on that corner there, but I'm not too concerned about that. I think by the time this is all painted, it'll really not notice at all. So let's try this on the back of R2-D2 and see how well it matches up. So we can click that in place. And there you go, you can see it does match the patterning that I was trying to. I've not put in all the details, so there were some quite fiddly bits on this sort of bottom middle panel here, which I've just sort of ignored, and there were supposed to be some sort of little vents on this. I'm really just going for the overall effect, and I think the overall effect of that is good. You wouldn't notice that. Certainly by the time I've painted that up, I don't think you'll notice it. So the next thing to do is actually to give this a coat of paint, and I'm going to try and match this sort of the yellowing and staining that we have on the main body. Even if I did de-yellow this figure, it still wouldn't be as pristine white as this styrene sheet, so I'm going to have to paint it whatever, but I think I can make something that will match that quite nicely. So yeah, I'm just going to get some paints out of my paint pot and get mixing. Really, if you're going to do this for yourself, you've just got to sort of try and match the tones of whatever figure it is you're fixing up. So in this instance, we need a bit of white, we need a bit of beige, and a few bits of orange as well, just to try and sort of tone it in, maybe a bit of brown as well. So that's the paints I'm going to get, and I will just mix until I've got something that looks right, and I'll put some staining around the edges as well to sort of try and match it in. But I'm really very pleased with how that looks. The overall effect, although not perfect, will certainly do the job. I ended up doing quite a few different sort of washes and mixes over the top of this to make it match the sort of the patina and aging that is on the R2-D2 I have here. And I think I've managed to get quite a nice sort of looking sort of finish to it. So what I ended up doing was I mixed some white, this is Vallejo model colours, this is a matte white paint. I mixed some of that with this, which is, what's it called, gold brown. So it's another colour, this is 70.877, and that gave me quite a nice sort of creamy yellow. I've then mixed in a tiny amount of this, which is a red brown made by Men Colour. This is MC237, just because some of the edges were actually a little bit more sort of orangey brown, and I think the end result is I've got something that looks really quite nice. On top of that, I've painted this satin varnish. Again, this is a Vallejo colour. This is at 70.522, just to give it that little bit of a sheen. You can see there as the light hits it, we've got a little bit of a sheen. So now if I bring in R2-D2 and we can put this onto him. You'll see how close I managed to get it. It's not perfect by any means, but it really does the job quite nicely, and I think most people seeing this would not notice that that had been handmade. It just sort of finishes it off. If I'd just done a plain panel, I think you would really notice that quite clearly, but this yeah, it does a reasonable job of sort of hiding the fact there was a missing battery cover. If you're going to be making a battery cover to get this version of R2 working, you would actually need to add some contacts in it. You can see that there are 2 contacts on the back there. They're for 2C type batteries, so you'd actually have to put a piece of copper or something across the back of this here to connect those 2 together. But because I'm doing this for a Wabi-Sabi display version, I've not bothered with that. But I think that does look really quite nice. So let's get R2's dome back on, and we'll class this figure as finished. And here he is finished and ready for display. As I say, this is a Wabi-Sabi restoration. I've not gone sort of all out on him. I just wanted him to look good enough that he would sort of sit on my shelf and fit in with the rest of my collection. And I think that is exactly what I've done here. I did do a final few little bits of paint touch-ups. There were some quite bad rubs on the front panel here, so I've just used a silver Sharpie just to finish those off. But as you can see, the dome, now that it is put on top of him, that really looks very nice. I'm incredibly impressed with that mirror paint. I think that works really very nicely indeed. And if I turn him around, there you go, you can see that is the battery compartment cover that I've made. As I say, that is not perfect, but it really doesn't look too bad at all. I think if you had that on a shelf like that, most people wouldn't even notice that that had been handmade. If you look close up, obviously you can see that it's not quite perfect, but really the overall effect is very nice indeed. So I've taken what was a very rough, broken up remote controlled R2-D2, and I now have something that really doesn't look too bad at all, and I'd be quite happy to put on my shelf with the rest of my 12-inch figures. In fact, I'm going to bring in the non-remote control version of R2-D2 just so you can see these 2 together, and as you can see, it really doesn't look bad at all. The yellowing on him gives him a nice sort of aging to it. It's, let's face it, it's carbon scoring. If you were watching the movies, that's exactly what Luke would say. He's got a lot of carbon scoring on him, and I think he has. I think it really suits him very nicely. So I do need to say a massive thank you to John, who very kindly sent what was a very sorry looking R2-D2 in to be fixed up. And as you can see, with a little bit of work and a little bit of effort, we've now got something that is quite displayable. If you've enjoyed this video, then why not hit the subscribe button and tap the bell to be notified each time I upload a new video. And thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching toy-polloi. Subscribe for more great videos. You can also follow toy-polloi on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram.